Hey, listeners, welcome to the latest episode of the Podcast of Record. Before we get started with the latest in marketing and advertising news today, we have a humble request for you. We've got a listener survey that is up now at the Podcast of Record website. You can get there by visiting podcastofrecord.com/survey. Producer Kyle will put that in the show notes as well for us. It's super quick. You can do it in like 20 seconds.
It's the only way we know we're not screaming into the void.
You've got a lot of options there to tell us what you like, what you don't like, including you want to hear more about Joe's rants or maybe Matt's weather updates or random statistics that we quiz producer Kyle on. You get to choose all of those options. So
Rebecca's incredibly controversial takes.
Which we're going to hear more of today. We're going to hear more of Rebecca's incredibly controversial takes.
Aren't you guys lucky?
Welcome back, Rebecca.
Thanks.
We're excited you're here.
Hey, listeners.
Her seat is boosted up higher than everyone else's in the studio because she was, for the camera, for those of you watching at home, she was not able to see over the microphone.
I've got these small legs.
So we got her boosted up nicely. All right, Joe, what are we going to talk about first today? I think
let's lead with the YouTube news.
Yeah,
so in Google's fourth quarter reports, they broke out their YouTube revenue for the first time. And I think most analysts were actually surprised at how small of a piece of Google's business that
I'm
YouTube
not an
accounted
analyst,
for.
and I was surprised.
It accounts for only 10% of their revenue, so I believe that was $4 billion. Hold on, let me review this. Oh, it was $15 billion. Sorry. $15 billion, about 10% of Google's overall revenue comes from YouTube. The vast majority of Google spending comes out of straight, plain old, boring search.
And a huge part that's growing for them is Google Cloud Computing. They're competing now on a very high level with Amazon's AWS and, of course, Microsoft with their Azure cloud hosting solution. So the cloud hosting portion for Google is definitely not a negligible portion of their revenue.
Yeah, so thoughts on...
Why is that surprising to you, though?
Well, one is YouTube is disproportionately a troublemaker for Google in terms of management. It's where all the criticism that's made of Google comes because of YouTube. Like,
Sure.
There's conspiracy theory videos, or they're showing murder
Search
clowns
ads
to children.
aren't super controversial, right?
Yeah. So I expected that YouTube would honestly have a bigger share of revenue than it does for the company. In fact, what I see there, it's very likely, and Facebook doesn't break this out, but it's likely that Facebook does more video ad revenue than YouTube does.
And Joe,
I think that's definitely possible. Sorry, Rebecca. Go ahead.
You're good. One of the things I think you're referring to is that they even stated that a majority of the revenue ends up getting paid back out to content creators.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually only profits them about $6 to $8 billion.
Oh, out of the 15, they only take 68. Yeah,
that 15 is misleading. Yeah.
Super low. So I don't know. Like, look, I think Google is a company that we overestimate its long-term power and potential. Google has this problem with visual search advertising, which everybody expects that search where you look at the phone and see a screen is going to diminish over the next 10 years. And Google's made investments in the audio category and home category, but it remains to be seen how they monetize that to the same level that they have search ads, which you can have people in the same industry bidding up the price for those search ads. They cost almost nothing to serve.
Yeah. So you
can throw 8 on the same screen, 4 at the top, 4 at the bottom.
Like, looking at the same situation, I actually take a little bit of an opposite view. I actually think it's a good thing that YouTube is only generating, 10% of Google's revenue. I think that in 2020, that's probably a good thing for Google because that means their business model has diversified, right? If there are severe interruptions to Facebook's ad network, its revenue is going to plummet through the floor, right?
Yeah.
If there is a critical glitch with Instagram, if there is a critical glitch with the Facebook mobile app, Facebook's revenue goes away, and even for a day or two, that causes them to miss quarterly goals. Google has a lot more...
They're more diversified.
It has a much more diverse way of making money. And remember, Google is powering most of the planet's favorite email server, right? Google is powering a huge number of companies and governmental institutions, email, calendar, note-taking applications. They're powering operating systems for a growing market of desktop and laptop computers, especially in the educational space. The Chromebooks are really starting to take off. They finally found a market for them. It was not the normal consumer. And Android obviously is still the most used mobile operating system on the planet. So I actually think that YouTube not being a huge
Is
portion
actually
of the
good
revenue
for Google.
is actually
Yeah.
good for Google. They are much more stable. And I'm not saying they won't experience a decline. We're probably going to have an economic bubble that pops over the next 18 to 24 months. But Google's going to be a lot better off going into that probably than these companies whose revenues are solely based on advertising.
So I have kind of an audible for our next segment.
Okay,
I
go
think
for
that's
it.
a good wrap up of Google. Basically, you look
Yeah.
at Google, it is either too reliant on search advertising or it is diversified enough that is an opportunity.
I thought you wanted to talk about Mayor Michael Bloomberg.
I
what
do,
do you want
but
to talk about
after
instead?
this, because that YouTube conversation brings up an interesting question.
Okay.
I heard being asked in a focus group,
Mhm.
actually, to determine what apps people were actually into in terms of news. And so the question is this, and this is for everybody in the room. We can go around. You can only pick one information or communication app to keep on your phone. So all the others get deleted. You get to keep one. What app do you choose?
Text messaging.
So pretend like not like a a direct one-to-one text messaging or email. Like pop those out like it's something that is like
You
owned.
just said a communication app.
Well, I mean, I look at text messaging emails more of a utility than I do like an app you'd pick up in the App Store.
All right, I'm going to look at my phone for a second. Rebecca, what's yours?
I mean, like social media platforms, you mean?
Or news, like it could be like the New York Times app. But where you would get information from?
I would probably, even though this isn't my favorite platform, I'd probably land on Twitter because it's the best combo of a news platform and a social platform.
Wait, now it's where I get information from instead of me communicating with other people? Pick your rules, son.
It's where you get information from.
Okay.
But look, most of these places where you get information, because they tend to be social media, it's also a place where communication happens.
Well,
Yeah, I think I land on Twitter.
Mine would be my browser. Like I would go Firefox.
Okay, that's a utility.
See,
Maybe
he
I
just-
phrased my question
He just
wrong.
makes up all these rules
Yeah.
as he goes along
Yeah.
and then enforces them.
Right.
I mean, I get all my information from my browser. What? How does that?
the app on your phone.
I
though.
like
Yeah.
the app of the internet.
But
The
you
app
don't-
is Firefox. That's not, that's
you
a
don't-
downloadable app.
Yeah, that is. But it comes on your phone already.
No.
Well,
No,
it's a
not
browser.
Firefox.
Look, a browser, an email service, like text messaging, those are all utilities, right?
Fine.
Understood.
Google Maps.
All right, Google Maps is a legitimate one.
Thank you.
Yep.
that comes on my phone.
But
Pre-downloaded.
Shut up, Kyle. It doesn't come on mine. I'm sorry you're an Android user.
What about yours, Joe?
well, I mean, I need Kyle to give me an actual
Oh my
one.
gosh, you're so needy.
Kyle, just tell him podcast.
Medium.
Medium.
Yeah.
That's a
Okay.
good one. Yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Max.
He said
Instagram.
Instagram.
Oh,
yeah.
Instagram straight flexing.
I would probably go with Twitter, like Rebecca said.
Copycat.
Because like it satisfies like if you can't get Instagram or Facebook or any of the news apps, but you have Twitter.
Neither one of you are using Twitter that much, though, on a
I
daily
use Twitter
basis.
all the time,
I have it.
secretly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use it that often now.
The
but
only scenario in which you're picking it is the end of the world where all the other apps on your phone have been deleted and it's a good, like, it does a bunch of stuff app.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's not good.
I'm changing mine. I'm changing mine to Reddit. I don't want Medium.
Ooh, Reddit's a good one. Yeah.
Because you can get everything
Yeah.
on Reddit.
Reddit's powerful.
Medium just writing people that don't have jobs.
Reddit is grossly
articles.
underestimated in the
Yeah.
influence it has on everything
Mhm.
else.
Yeah.
All right, just a little query.
That was a
I'm
weird
glad you guys
segment.
managed to destroy it by saying the boringest shit you could think of. Well, I'd have my
The
email.
most useful shit.
You
made.
picked Twitter.
I'd have my browser.
You picked
All
Twitter.
right, good. I'd just go to www.twitter.com and just log in, check out what's going on.
Hell yeah.
Gotcha.
Can we just mute him? Or
I changed my answer to the call button because if I need to call 911,
Call
it's the
button.
most useful.
Yeah, I'd have that side button where if I hold it, it makes an emergency call because you never know when you're going to get in a fire.
Yeah.
I like the Photos app personally.
Communicate with my past selves.
All right, you know what I learned from this? I learned that I need to be more precise in that
Yes,
question
you
for it
do.
to matter.
Think
Well,
about it.
I mean, you
Thanks.
should have learned that if you're going to impose rules, you need to deliver them
Yeah,
up front.
thanks for this very hostile focus group.
And on that note, Mike Bloomberg.
Yeah, let's talk about Mike Bloomberg.
Joe's got some hot thoughts on Mike Bloomberg.
Take it away, Joe.
A lot of pressure on me. All right, so
You're the one that wants to talk about Mayor Mike. Not to be confused with Magic Mike, which is next week.
Very different.
I feel attacked in this room, to be honest with everybody.
I'm Joe. I wrote an op-ed about Mayor Mike Bloomberg, but now I don't want to talk about him.
All right, so Bloomberg, if you got into the race in November, right, he spent $300 million since November. He's probably closing in on $500 million between the last report and now, actually. So when he first got in, I kind of ignored it. Usually when you see really wealthy people get into an election...
Well, everyone just thought it was going to be another Tom Steyer entrance. He was going to dump a bunch of cash so he could get into a debate.
Not really spend it all at once, kind of dilly-dally around. Just do it for the lulz, right? Because it's fun to fly around on your jet and have something to do. It turns out that I don't think Bloomberg is doing that. What changed my mind on this, and I even made a comment in the podcast here, I was like, I don't know how you're going to sell a straight white billionaire from Wall Street to the Democratic base. And then
but here we are.
Last week, I got into his Facebook ads archive and his Google ads archive. You know, Facebook and Google over the last couple of years have rolled out this archive where you can look at the ads placed by any account running political advertising at all. And when I started looking at it, what I realized is we're dealing with a nuclear level political campaign machine there. For the past 4 or 5 years, Donald Trump's team, led by Brad Parscale, have been the best, hands down, at running internet ads, at memes, at pushing things into the culture. And then when I saw what Bloomberg is doing, their team, it's as good, if not better. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's important to understand about Bloomberg is the scale of what he's done right now. He has about 2,100 full-time staff. That makes him bigger than the RNC and DNC combined.
And they've got one hell of a sushi bill.
Yeah, $10,000 in one sushi meal, $200,000 in catering. They're paying field staff, so the people who go knock on doors and bring T-shirts to events, $71,000 a year. That's probably double to triple
I would totally take $71K a year to fire T-shirts out of a T-shirt can.
Yeah. Their state staff are making $10,000 plus a month. They are hiring aggressively off of Madison Avenue and out of Silicon Valley. Including some people from VaynerMedia. And what I saw replicated in that Bloomberg ad archive was a playbook straight out of the VaynerMedia playbook. Mm-hmm. It is a mass volume of creative designed for social media, very high impact, very persuasive, and doing a lot of smart experimental things.
And one of the things we haven't really seen with a presidential candidate yet is an aggressive use of influencer marketing, right? And that makes sense when you've got influence coming in from Madison Avenue ad agencies, is that they're going to use the tactics they're recommending to their corporate clients and start applying it to political campaigns. And influencer marketing has not really penetrated the campaign world. Yeah.
But when you have infinity money, you can experiment. I mean, Rebecca, you caught some of these memes, right?
Yeah.
What's the overview?
So Bloomberg has been doing a bunch of influencer marketing with the meme accounts on Instagram. And so Neat Dad or Middle Class Fancy, they have this maybe it's real conversation between
like a text conversation, like a message conversation.
The DMs,
well, like a DM.
Yeah, it's a DM conversation between Mike Bloomberg and the account.
Like just read one.
Let me pull up an example of one, but it's
like the one where he's like, "Hello, shithead." The account's called Shithead Steve.
and so they make it so it's something relevant to the account, whatever he DMs. Oh, I don't have my phone in here. Does someone want to pull it up in the convo? Or I can look up one. So, for example, Middle Class Fancy. I'm pulling it up now. The conversation is Mike Bloomberg goes, "Hello, Mr. Fancy. Even though I myself am not a member of the middle class, I still find your memes relatable and humorous. Can you post a meme to make me look cool for the upcoming Democratic primary?" And Middle Class Fancy replies, "Maybe, but the content would have to align with my account." So he sends a photo of him wearing shorts and a polo and a vest, and he goes, "When you're upper class casual." And I know that doesn't really land right now when you can't see the photo, but it's pretty hilarious.
So
it's an aggressive vest.
I like the Dr. Grayfang one where Bloomberg's request is, "Can you fax that over to me by the time markets close tomorrow?"
Yes, that was hilarious. And all of them have the same caption. Well, they all kind of vary, but they always include the parentheses. And yes, this is really # sponsored by Mike Bloomberg. So I know that was probably part of the requirement in their deal.
Yeah.
So we have some differing opinions on this. Joe thinks it's brilliant, and he'll touch on that in a second. My opinion on it, some of them were hits, like Middle Class Fancy, I LOL'd at it, and some of them were just like really cringy. And I think the comment that really encompasses all of this for me was on the Middle Class Fancy one. The top comment is, "Okay, Bloomer." And
the Bernie
like
bros
that.
are in there trolling hard.
And I thought that was
Okay,
hilarious,
boomer.
but also so relevant, right? Like, you have this boomer trying to be young and cool. And sometimes you're like, okay, that's an A for effort. And then sometimes you're like, please stop.
Yeah. So, by the way, there's another one where I think it's the Dr. Grayfang account, and it's like, "Hello, doctor. I have a meme. Can you make me look cool?" And then Dr. Grayfang's like, "I'm hungover right now." And then it's like, "I have $61 billion." And then Dr. Grayfang's like, "I'm feeling much better."
Much better, yeah.
I seem to be feeling much better. Look, I think this is the ultimate experiment in how much money matters, right? So there's a hypothesis that you would have on something like this that says it seems dumb the first time you see it. The 10th time you see it, it seems like, no, all right, I've seen this
Look,
before.
The first 10 people that saw Middle Class Fancy thought it was weird,
Yeah.
right? Like when it first started posting things, like the first few people that saw it was like, what the hell is this person doing? Like with a Simi Chili's logo
Yeah.
talking about Nance and Rand going to Olive Garden.
Yeah. But at 30 impressions from the Bloomberg campaign, you might have something where it becomes persuasive. And if you can drive a high enough frequency, that all of a sudden it goes from being, get it out of the race, we don't like you, to now we're going to troll you in the comments, to this is kind of interesting, to I'm going to vote for Michael Bloomberg.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to spend enough money and get enough impressions out.
It's more than just money, though, right? Like one of the important parts.
They're doing smart stuff.
Yeah, it has been the things that they're willing to do that other campaigns aren't, or that other campaigns can't do at that scale because they don't have that money. Tom Steyer's pissed away plenty of cash into this race and has basically nothing to show for it.
Yeah, but his digital team hasn't done the
Right,
same
they've
level of
pissed
quality.
it all into
Yeah.
television ads and like typical political campaign fare.
One of the things I noticed, and I wrote this in an op-ed I published yesterday for Florida Politics, is one of the things they're doing really smart on that Bloomberg account is there's no ad where he's portrayed like standing in a neighborhood in his like polo shirt, be like, "And here I am again, asking you to send me $5.57."
Business, very presidential.
Always in a
looking.
suit, always
Yeah.
in a tie, at a podium on Air Force One. You can already visualize him in the job, and this was a key piece of persuasion that the Trump campaign always ran. Have you ever seen Trump without a suit?
Yeah, when he's golfing.
Golfing.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Right?
When he's golfing with a tucked in like
That's it.
Trump golf course
Yep.
polo
Never,
and a USA hat.
never any other time.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, I agree.
You see Trump in golf attire, or you see Trump in a suit and tie. And that's very carefully cultivated. Everything about Trump in 2016 and what they do now, he's in an arena of people screaming his name. He's in a crowd. Now, the one thing Bloomberg is also good at, better than any other Democratic candidates, is trolling Trump. Like, Bloomberg's people understand what's going on, why Trump's effective. So when they're attacking Trump, the things they're doing very well are they're taking these pieces when Trump is out of that presidential character.
Yeah.
Not what he says. This is important. Most of these other races will take something Trump says, like, can you believe he says
No, it's
this?
about what he is.
And what he looks like.
Yeah.
And so they have the one where he's directing the national anthem, and they have one where he's wearing a hard hat talking to, like, coal workers and looks kind of dopey.
There's the gingerbread pants on fire.
The gingerbread. So they have one where he's giving a speech, and then they just dubbed it over to say lie, 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 and there's a dancing gingerbread man on the screen.
with his pants on fire.
Yeah,
which
with
is
his
important
pants on
because
fire.
he's a liar,
His
liar.
gingerbread
pants on fire.
pants.
Yeah.
His
What do you-
ginger pants.
What his ginger pants? What do you guys think was the goal of the meatball with his face photoshopped on it?
I think the goal was he couldn't get into the debate, and the only way people were going to talk about him during the debate was if they did something weird enough
Yeah.
that people had to talk about it. Like, why the hell did they Photoshop his face onto a
Well,
meatball
look,
and tweet it out during the debate?
What's really important here is that this is one of VaynerMedia's executives running it. We know VaynerMedia in their Super Bowl ads was running the "if you can't be funny, be weird." We talked about this with Jason Momoa. That is that strategy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what can we do to visually shock the system if we can't be, witty and we can't be
And
funny?
at least on that level, it worked, right? Because
Yeah.
we're sitting
Talking
here
about
talking
it.
about
Talking
it
about
how
weeks
strange
later
it is,
on a
yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, and that's why I think like everybody is grossly underestimating the skill of what's being done on behalf of Bloomberg.
I read an article earlier this morning, and I wish I'd saved it, but it was talking about how
Bro, I wrote an article this morning.
Congrats. I didn't read it. But talking about how Bloomberg switched his language to specifically talking about how Trump inherited his money instead of making it.
Yep.
And there's a really important reason for that is because that actually specifically with a moderate GOP base starts to erode the confidence they have in him of being this hyper successful businessman. When you start to use that language, the psychology starts to break down for those people where they don't think he's a successful businessman anymore. They think he's a spoiled rich kid who inherited his money.
Yeah.
And it erodes that confidence of the people that are already a little bit shaky about liking Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Obviously does nothing for the people that are going to rallies.
It's the little things like that where Bloomberg's people are doing really next level things for him that the other Democrats aren't even in the ballpark. Like the distance between the best Democrat in the race right now and Michael Bloomberg in terms of advertising is
it's light years.
High school baseball to, World Series.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not even in the same league.
So Michael Bloomberg has a famous quote that he likes to use with that he's used for a long time, not just for the campaign.
Do you think Michael Bloomberg sponsored this podcast?
He might. I mean, why not?
Reach out to him.
They're just pouring.
Can we see him?
They're pouring cauldrons of cash on every other place on the internet. Why not here? So he has a quote that he likes to say. It's from when he created his media empire. Does anyone know what it is?
Nope.
It's been in a lot of stories about him. Joe?
Full spend.
Nope.
Nope.
So he has a quote that says, "In God we trust, all others bring data."
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, well, that makes sense given his business.
Given his business, yeah.
Look, I think that pretty well. I mean, Rebecca, do you have any other thoughts? I mean, how do you feel about just having another straight white billionaire man telling you what to do?
Oh, see, this is where a lot of people might disagree with me. I have zero issue with it. Like, Jonathan and I were actually talking about this the other day. He's like, I kind of like Bloomberg. I was like, I wouldn't hate it. Like, if someone has become a billionaire in America, that's someone that I trust understands our economy well enough to be able to lead it and make good decisions. Like, that's just kind of my mentality. So me personally, I know, my colleagues or people our age are supposed to be like, oh, we hate billionaires. I'm like, I want
to be real clear. I do not hate billionaires.
Yeah, I know,
I want to be real clear. I don't hate billionaires.
I was like, I have no issue with that, whether it's a right-leaning billionaire or a left-leaning billionaire. Like, there's a certain level of trust I have with them just being a billionaire. Maybe that's naive.
You are such an establishment elitist.
I am so establishment. It's not even funny.
I want to become an oligarch. So, I mean, I can't shun billionaires.
Oligarchy? Sign me up.
So,
I mean, in an oligarchy, you just want to make sure you're one of the oligarchs.
Correct.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of forms of government. You just want to make sure
You just
you're in
wanna
the
make sure
position
you're in
of
As long
charge.
as you're in
Right.
the top tier, it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter
Right.
what form it is.
Yeah, that's so true.
So let's talk about the final segment of today. And we actually have a nice segue here. We're going to go from talking about memes about these people to actually talking about them.
Karens!
We're going to talk about the Karens. Rebecca went on fire last week on the Karens, talking about the Super Bowl. But first, I want
Sorry,
to talk
not
about who the
sorry.
Karens are. So if you're not spending hours a day on Instagram, you might not know who the Karens, the Beckys, the Chads, the Brads, or the Kyles of the internet
Important to know
actually
why
are.
I thought we should put this in the podcast.
Yes. Okay.
So while everybody in this room and maybe a lot of the listeners are familiar with the Karen meme, my mom saw the video we put out from that segment and asked me on the phone, like, she was like, what's a Karen?
Yeah.
And I had to explain to her what a Karen is. And this coincided with Vox putting out a pretty well-researched article about like the rise of the Karen meme and where it came from. So I think it's an interesting cultural piece that was worth some time for us to explore, like why the Karen works.
And I'm going to give you a couple of lines just to start this conversation from the Vox article. The Vox article is entitled "Karen, the anti-vaxxer soccer mom with speak to the manager hair." Explained.
Is it waterfalls in front, daggers in back?
Welcome to the segment. So, and again, this applies to several different stereotypes that have formed on the internet. We've got the Karens, the Brads, the Chads, the Beckys, the Kyles. Kyle likes Monster Energy drinks. So
Becky
Kyle's,
with the good hair
Becky,
is what they say.
Well, this is Becky with the maybe with the good hair. We'll
That's
see.
a Karen.
So, directly from the article, increasingly, Karen in particular has emerged as the front runner for the average basic white person name, a pejorative catch-all label for a wide range of behaviors thought to have connections to white privilege. where a similar insult like "okay boomer" stereotypes a specific generation, calling someone a Karen draws on associations people have built around extremely common names, but the stereotype the name conjures, at least in the U.S., is limited mainly to white women in their mid-30s or 40s. The archetype Carol is blonde, has multiple young kids, and is usually an anti-vaxxer. Karen has a "can I speak to the manager" haircut and a controlling, superior attitude to go along with it.
Oh, Karen. Question for the table. Why did the Karen become a meme? Like, what is it that makes that work?
It is so relatable.
Yeah.
Everyone knows one.
If you've held any sort of customer service job, from restaurants to retail to phone, anywhere in between, you've had some middle-aged white man or white woman call you and just berate you and then want to speak to your manager. Like my first summer home from school, I worked at Office Depot, and it was like 30% Karen situations in Office Depot. Like, this notepad didn't fulfill my desires the way I thought it was going to.
I didn't love this printer paper.
This printer paper had 499 sheets instead of 500, and I'd like to speak to the store owner. Where's Mr. Depot?
Yeah, I just think it's really relatable. And even on the other end of it, right? Maybe if you didn't have to deal with one in customer service, but you have like an aunt or something that you're out at the store with her and she's like ripping into this poor 16-year-old and you're just like behind her like mouthing, "I'm sorry." Like I just think it's so relatable to everyone.
Another one is
popular.
like, I'm going to get done in church on Sunday morning and then go out to eat and tip someone 4% and yell at them and berate them the entire time. That's another good version of the Karen meme.
Yep, there you go.
So
are we being unfair to Karens around the world, Joe?
So the what the article makes the case is like that it's sexist. That you don't have the same meme about assertive men. You only have that meme about assertive and opinionated women.
Is it assertive, though? I mean, it's assertive, yes. But is
the argument
just
would be,
because she's assertive, that's why
the argument would be it only comes across as aggressive because it's a woman doing it.
Isn't the Rand character kind of the same thing, though?
No, man, Rand is chill. Rand's getting bossed around by a Karen.
There's another one, though.
Rand is just here for 2-for-1 margs.
Well, there's two guy names, and one of them is like a sassy white older male in the middle class fancy dogma.
I don't think everybody's got the
that's it.
Yeah.
It's not
the
Rand.
New Balance is that? I think that's Rand.
Rand's a little sassy. Rand yells at people as well, but gets bossed around by Karen.
Yeah, I mean, Rand is like, get off my grass. I just mowed it.
Well, but Rand's counterpart is Nance, who's also just here to have a good time.
Okay.
She's just here for the free breadsticks at all of them.
Yeah, I think
look, Rebecca is very aggressive and assertive, but
I'm
I
not
do
a
not think
Karen.
Rebecca is a Karen.
Thank
yeah,
you.
maybe she's just not old enough, right? That article basically argues that it's when
but
a
I mean,
woman
even
is
the behavior I've never seen.
It's the
Yeah.
haircut.
Yeah.
It's different. It's not just her being assertive. It's her being rude, too.
Yeah,
like,
that's
her
the
having,
important part, is being rude.
You can be assertive and still be like, hey, like, is there anything you can do? Like, this just didn't work out for me. Like, I need to return it. And then there's like, how dare you guys sell me this with only 499 sheets of paper? And this poor customer service person is like, do I count all the sheets of paper that we sell? So
yeah.
I think that's the difference.
Deep down in the article, they make a reference that there's a couple of male versions that have been talked about on the internet of Karen. One of them is Kyle. I don't think that's right. I think the Kyle meme is a totally different person. I don't think he's the male equivalent of a Karen.
I just think it's
Kyle is just running on Monster Energy
and
drinks
dirt bikes
and dirt bikes.
But it's the same thing. So if you think you are like that represents you, then you're definitely a Karen. Like,
yes.
I don't take offense to the Kyle meme.
That's a fair point. Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I don't chug Monster.
well,
I
so
do like
let's
dirt bikes.
I mean, let's do it right here on the show then. What is Karen's male equivalent? Let's give him a name and let's give him a profile. We'll do it right now on the air.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure.
We do this in the car all the time when
Yeah.
we see people on the road and make up a profile
well,
for
there's
them
cameras
and
and
how we
microphones
would
here.
market to them. It's a game we like to play in the car. We pick someone out, give them a backstory, and then how we would write an ad for them.
I think the version of the male would be like the dad who's with his family who like clearly is like he's not hitting on the waitress, but he's like
It's Scott.
he's joking.
Scott.
It's
I like
Scott.
Scott. And
Yeah.
just
It's
kind of
Scott.
and just kind of checked out to everything else
He
that
orders
is
a
going
steak
on.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Like no matter where he's at.
I have a good one.
Yeah.
Al.
Yeah, Al Scott.
I feel like Al might be more in his 50s or 60s. Though.
I like
well,
Scott.
so this is the funny thing about Karen. We actually looked up
Yeah.
the age distributions
Mhm.
according to Social Security for birth years of different ages. And Karens aren't in their 30 and 40s. Karens are in their late 50s,
and that
early
makes
60s.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
the name is actually anachronistic to who it's being applied to.
Well, the thing is, I think Karen was 30 or 40 when we had the strongest impact. Like, I think we view ourselves like, oh, when were you working a customer service job
yeah,
as a
so-
teen?
So it's
She was
15
30 to
years
40 then.
delayed.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And now, like a decade later,
Wow.
we're
Maybe it's Bill. All right, we got to come up with a consensus though.
Bill. So what do we got? We have Scott.
We have Scott, Al, and Bill as the options. here.
Anything else being offered between Scott,
I don't think we
Al,
should have
Bill?
to do this. Karen's Karen, Kyle's Kyle. Everybody's who they are.
No, but
and-
I mean, you just described the male person we're talking
Yeah.
about. He needs a name.
But this is a necessity. Like, you're saying it's a necessity because some people think Karen's sexist. Like,
no, I'm not saying that's the reason we
Yeah.
should do it. I'm saying if there's a character that exists and doesn't have a name, we should be the ones to take the lead on
I
giving
see
him a
what you're
name.
saying.
ow.
I like Scott.
I like Scott. I can go behind
Joe,
Scott.
tiebreaker. Who do you like?
I mean, I said Scott, so it's a little unfair.
Yeah, let's go Scott.
Scott it is.
Yeah.
All right, so what's Scott like?
Scott definitely drives a truck.
Scott definitely golfs.
Yes.
Yeah, Scott golfs. Scott drives a truck. Scott
Wears a hat even when he doesn't need to.
No, not flip flops. He has more flip flops.
Boat shoes.
Boat shoes.
boat
Yes.
shoes. Yeah,
Let's think of the Scott starter pack. You got boat shoes for sure.
yeah.
Braided belt.
Braided belt.
Ooh, that's a good
Yeah.
one.
Columbia shirt.
Yeah, Columbia hat.
Yep.
And polarized.
Yeah, polarized
Sunglasses.
Oh,
sunglasses
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, wraparounds. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, Oakley's? Is he at Oakley's or is that Kyle?
No,
No,
he's not
like
wraparound
he's like
Oakleys.
a Maui Jim or
Yeah.
like another, or like another fishing brand of
Yeah.
Yeah.
sunglasses. Yeah.
Costas, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so people know that he does outdoor things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But he's
Oh yeah,
not in
and there's
shape.
definitely
Not
like a
outdoor at all.
little croquis thing or whatever
Yeah.
on it,
Yeah.
so he can drop them around his
Yeah.
neck.
Scott watches disproportionate amount of Fox News.
So much
Yep.
Fox News.
Scott's
Yeah.
upset that Duck Dynasty is no longer on the air.
Is Scott that conservative?
No, he watched American Pickers. He watches
Yeah.
some History
Mhm.
Channel
Yeah,
stuff.
he's into History
Gold-
Channel
the
for
gold
sure.
Yeah, I
Sure.
don't think
Yeah.
Scott is necessarily like at a Trump rally or anything. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
Scott is just like he's probably going to watch Fox News if he's going to watch news,
Scott
but he'd rather be watching sports.
Scott doesn't identify with any political party, even though he's registered and votes one,
Yeah.
because Scott has full distrust of all government and all people.
That's true. Yeah, Scott. Scott is convinced everybody is lying to him.
Yes.
Scott does not like the NFL because he thinks
Yep.
it's too corporate.
But he
and
never watched it anyway.
he never watched it anyways. But he exclusively likes college football.
Yeah.
Yes, college football.
Scott is the guy in every city that has an NFL team that won't go to the stadium because the stadium is publicly financed.
Okay.
Does watch college football for
All
sure.
right, but what's the behavior of Scott? What makes him? I mean, we've given a lot of traits of Scott.
Yeah.
Like, what are the things he likes to do? What are the behaviors of Scott,
Scott
that
does-
make him like something to pick on?
He does his own yard work.
Okay.
Oh, to
I mean,
pick
Scott
on.
definitely does his own
Yeah,
yard
yeah,
work.
for
yeah.
sure. So I think the trait is the work that Scott doesn't do in his own yard or own house. He is overly critical of the work that is done by the people he hires for
Yep.
it.
Okay.
Yep.
Scott
Doesn't
said-
cook. He's never cooked a meal.
Oh,
in
Scott
his
has
life.
definitely never cooked, but he grills.
grills. He
definitely
grills.
Grill.
Yes. yes.
Scott.
No one can touch his grill.
Yes,
I got
Yeah.
it. Scott orders his steak rare, opens it up, and sends it back because it's medium rare.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Or
yeah.
has Karen
I
send it
like
back.
that. Yeah.
You know what else is? Oh, Scott is definitely after just one drink, is saying very loud political opinions,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
like
drinks beer.
proclaimed.
I
Not
think
craft beer,
I,
he drinks regular
No, I
beer.
think he's a Michelob Ultra or
Yeah.
like a Canadian whiskey
Yeah.
kind of guy. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Mixer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm describing my father, by the way.
He's going
Relatable. It always ends up being relatable.
All right, we're pushing time. So
this
what else
is an
about Scott
important
before we
discussion that
close?
America needs to have. So I don't apologize.
America left 4 minutes ago.
No, America sees this in video clips now, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. Last thought, like, what is Scott's generic attitude? How does he go about life?
Well, Karen is, I'd like to speak to a manager. So what is
Yeah.
Scott's thing that he is known for saying?
We'll close on that.
This is
Where does Scott always want to go to dinner? That he says like, "Hey, you guys want to go?"
How about Longhorn?
Longhorn. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Or Outback. but
Longhorn,
I like Longhorn.
Outback,
Yeah.
Texas Roadhouse.
Yeah. How about Longhorn?
Yeah.
I mean, Scott is definitely in the Facebook comments.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But on like local news stories.
Mhm.
Like if there's a local news story about, like whatever crime, he's got an opinion on why crime's happening in that part of town.
Shared Facebook with Karen.
No.
I don't know
no,
that
he
I agree
doesn't.
with that. Yeah, I don't
He
know
doesn't
that
have
I
shared-
agree with that.
Because shared Facebook with Karen would mean
He doesn't control the Facebook.
I think
Yeah.
Scott's,
Ooh,
I think
yeah.
Scott's probably sent a couple of Facebook messages to like girls he dated in high school.
100%.
Yeah,
Yep.
just like dipping
Scott's
his
not
toes
married.
in the water.
Is that what we're saying?
No, Scott is
Scott's
married,
Scott's
but I think
okay.
Scott has kept in touch with a couple of like
Yeah.
high school girlfriends just to,
Yeah.
if something were to happen later in life.
Yeah.
he still
Scott's-
talks about the girls he kissed in high school.
For
too.
sure.
Yes, he does.
For sure.
Yes.
And calls people libtards on social media.
in person.
Any other Scott characteristics that are what we didn't finish our Scott starter pack.
No, I think that was
Boat
we
shoes,
didn't-
Columbia,
we got him.
braided belt.
We got him pretty
Okay.
well equipped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sunglasses, polarized.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's
Doesn't have a boat yet, but wants one.
Yeah.
Always
we'll never
talks
have
about
a
it.
boat.
Always
Yeah.
talks about the boat.
Yeah.
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 Where does Scott go on vacation?
Panama City.
cruise.
I think
Cruise.
Cruise
Yeah.
every time.
Yeah.
Cruise to the Bahamas.
Well,
because
because the thing you have to keep in mind about Scott is, unlike Karen, where it's unclear where her income comes from,
Yeah.
Scott is
multi-level marketing schemes.
Yeah, well, that's what Karen's into.
Yeah.
Scott is relatively successful at what he does for
Yeah.
whatever reason, right? He's a general contractor.
Scott's been in
He's-
the same like corporate-ish type job for 20 years
Mhm.
with no promotion in the last
Scott's
15
in
years.
accounting. He's in some field where being relatively meticulous and kind of being an asshole makes you somewhat good at it.
Right.
All right. Well, Scott, hope you listened. Got some insight about yourself.
We didn't mean to offend you, Scott. And
None
if
of
you're
this is
offended,
meant to offend. We're designing
No,
characters.
it's entirely designed to offend.
I've seen way too many Kyle memes to give a shit about if
Right.
offended.
And if you're
Their
offended,
names.
it means you probably are, Scott. So I'm sorry.
So don't be a Scott anymore.
Yeah.
Or Karen.
Be
Kyle-
a scooter.
Meanwhile, Kyle just go pound another Monster Energy drink, get on that dirt bike, and ride your Jeep into the sunset.
I'm like 2/3 of a Kyle meme. I
You
just
are.
don't care.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're just missing the energy drink.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll get him energy.
Perfect. One more reminder: it would really help if you take the listener survey. I'm begging you. I'm just begging you to take it. It's easy to do. It'll take 20 seconds. Pop over to podcastarecord.com/survey. Tell us what you like, maybe what you don't like. We'll try to incorporate more of it into the show. We know more of you have been listening over the last few weeks. We appreciate that. To everyone who's joining us for the first time, we're glad you stuck around. We hope you'll come back next week when we'll be back with the latest market and advertising and a few hot takes and maybe some new information about Karen, Scott, Brad, Chad, Becky, Kyle, and all their collective friends. Thanks for joining us on the Podcaster Record.